Shalom Aleichem, welcome to this Shir in the Kutei Sichis, Chelek Tezayin, Parshas Beshalach, Sicha Dalid. The Sicha is about the Sugi of Erev Tavshilin, and Be'ezer Hashem we will see the Chidush Niflo that the Rebbe is Mechadish in the Sugi of Erev Tavshilin, and Be'ikir how he explains the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch. So primarily the Sikha is out to explain what seems to be an inconsistency in the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch between the way he brings what l'chura the same halacha in the halachas of Erev Tavshilin and in the halachas of Erev Chatzeres. Seemingly b'ashkafa Rishayna it's the same halacha, but kadaikis there are some differences, and that's what the Sikha is be'ikr out to explain why there are these differences. So we're going to start by taking a look at the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, Simin Tov Kuf Chav Zayin, Sif Chav Hei. It's talking about an Erev Tavshilin. So the Alter Rebbe says, Aval lechatchila tzorech shiyu apas v'atavshil shmurim etzloi, ad la'acher shetikein kol tzorchei Shabbos. That lechatchila the Erev Tavshilin, which consists of pas and a tavshil, so this has to be kept intact until after the person finishes preparing all the tzarchei Shabbos. She'oz rashai la'ochla me'ikar hadin, and once you're finished preparing for Shabbos, then me'ikar hadin, you're allowed to eat up the Erev Tavshilin. That's me'ikar hadin. However, he continues, nevertheless, mitzvah min hamuvchor lahamtin melechel hapas shel Erev Tavshilin. Nevertheless, it's a mitzvah min hamuvchor to wait from eating the pas, the bread of the Erev Tavshilin, ad echad misholosh su'udos haShabbos. You should wait until one of the three sudas on Shabbos, kidei livtzoya olav imu kikasholim. So that, as long as it's a complete loaf of bread, you could break bread, so to speak. It could be beitzeya, you could be keveya yosuda on the pass of the Erev Tavshilin. What's the reason why you should wait until one of the sudas of Shabbos? If meikar hadin, you could eat up the Erev Tavshilin as soon as you finish preparing all the tzarchei Shabbos. So what's the idea of waiting to be beitzeya on this pass until one of the sudas of Shabbos? So the Alter Rebbe says, "Shekol dover shenase by mitzvah achas, roi lasis by mitzvah acheres." We have a klal. Anything that was used to perform one mitzvah, dover shenase by mitzvah achas, so it's roi lasis by mitzvah acheres. So therefore, since you already did one mitzvah with this pas, you made Erev Tavshilin, so now it's roi lasis by mitzvah acheres, which is why it's a mitzvah min hamuvchar to use this pas for one of the sudas of Shabbos. And then he's Moisif, v'yesh noyagin, sheloi livtzeya olav ad suda shlishis shel Shabbos. Even those who have a minig not to be beitzeya on the pass of the Erev Tavshilin until the suda shlishis. Kedei lasis boi mitzvahs harbe, in order to use this pass for many mitzvahs. Shemarichin ze akikal lechem mishnah b'sidar rishayna. You first use it as one of the lechem mishnah for the first suda. And you use it again for the lechem mishnah for the second suda, but you don't eat it yet. And only by suda shlishis do you actually eat the pas of the Erev Tavshilin. So this is the halacha that it says in Siman Tov Kuf Chav Zayin when he talks about Erev Tavshilin. Now, in Hilchas Erevin, in Simen Shin Tzadik Gimel, in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, he's talking about Erev Chatzeres, and there he brings l'chura similar halacha. So let's see what he says there. In Sif Gimel, Shin Tzadik Gimel, Sif Gimel, he says, Erev ein tzarech liyaskayim ele bein hashmashos. The Erev Chatzeres only has to be kept intact during bein hashmashos. And you're allowed to eat it, again, this is me'ikar hadin, you're allowed to eat it as soon as it's vadei chashecha, as soon as it's vadei dark, it's vadei laila, you can eat up the Erev Chatzeres. However, he says, V'yesh liftzoya olav b'Shabbat shachris. However, v'yesh, one should, it's proper to only eat the bread b'Shabbat shachris, by the Suda of Shabbos day. And he adds in Chatzoy Igul, Oy b'Sudas halayla im soyed mishay chashecha vaday, or you could also eat it by the Sudas halayla, as long as you're eating the Suda when it's vaday dark outside. So again, you should be beitzeya on it by the day meal, Shabbos day meal, or in Chatzoy Igul, even b'Sudas halayla, if you're eating when it's dark. Why? The hoil v'nas is by mitzvah achas, again the same klal that we saw before. Since you already performed one mitzvah with it, the mitzvah of Erev Chatzeres, yesh las is by gamkein mitzvah acheres. So it's proper to also do another mitzvah with it, that is to use it for Sudas Shabbos. So that's the halacha in Shin Tzaddik Gimel in Hilchas Erev Chatzeres. So the Rebbe points out in the Mahalach of the Sikha that there are two primary differences between these two halachas. Firstly, the most glaring difference is that in Hilchis Erev Tavshilin Tov Kuf Chav Zayin, he doesn't just say that you should be beitzeya on it by one of the sudas of Shabbos, and say by sudas Shachris. He specifically brings the minig v'yashnoyagin to do it by Suda Shlishis, by the third Suda. As he says there, v'yashnoyagin shlo livtzoya olav ad Suda Shlishis, kedei lazes by mitzvahs harbe. But in the halachas of Erev Chatzeres, he doesn't mention this at all. By Erev Chatzeres, he only says to use it by the morning meal, Shabbos Shachris, or in Chatzoy Igul, perhaps even Besudas Laila, but doesn't mention the idea of eating it dafka by Suda Shlishis, kedei lasses by mitzvahs harbe. Only by Erev Tavshilin does he mention this nekuda of eating it dafka by Suda Shlishis, kedei lasses by mitzvahs harbe. That's the first shaila which the Rebbe is trying to address. Why is there this difference? The second shaila is more of a diuk, and that is that the lashon is different. In Tov Kuf Chav Zayin by Erev Tavshilin, the lashon is that even though me'ikar hadin you can eat it once you finish preparing for Shabbos, tzorich shiyu apas v'tavshil shmurim etzli ad la'achas shetikin kol tzorich Shabbos she'oz rashi loch le'me'ikar hadin u'mikol makei mitzvah min ha'muvchar. The lashon there is it's a mitzvah min ha'muvchar lahamtin. That's the lashon by Erev Tavshilin. Mitzvah min ha'muvchar lahamtin milach lapas until one of the sudas of Shabbos. Whereas by the halachas of Erev Chatzeres, he doesn't say mitzvah min ha'muvchar. By Erev Chatzeres, he says that Mikra Din, the Erev only has to be intact ben hashmoshes. However, when he brings the idea of waiting until one of the sudas of Shabbos, meaning you shouldn't eat, even though you could eat the Erev Chatzeres right away, but there's an inyan to wait and eat a dafka by the sudas of Shabbos, he doesn't say mitzvah min ha'muvchar lahamtin milechol ad echad mishol sudas haShabbos. He doesn't say that. He just says v'yesh livtzoya olav b'Shabbos shachris. The hoil v'nases by mitzvah achas, yesh lases by gamken mitzvah acheres. So this is the second question, diuk, which the Rebbe is addressing. Why is there this difference? Why by Erev Chatzeres does the Alter Rebbe say only v'yesh livtzoya olav b'Shabbos shachris? There's an inyan to be beitzeya dafke by one of the sudas of Shabbos, and by Erev Tavshilin the lashon is mitzvah min ha'muvchar lahamtin milach lapas. It's a mitzvah min ha'muvchar to wait and not eat the pas until one of the sudas of Shabbos. This is the second question. Okay, so to understand this, the Rebbe gets into bichlal the sugya of Erev Tavshilin. Now in the Sikha he brings the Gemara from Masech Beya, Daf Tesvav Amud Beis, where there we have the sugya of Erev Tavshilin. However, it is important to properly understand the sugya of Erev Tavshilin to be makdim with another Gemara. So the Gemara that I'm going to say now is not mentioned in the Sikha. However, it's definitely kedai to see this Gemara, because this Gemara actually needs to come before the Gemara in Beya. So let's take a look at the Gemara, another Gemara in Masechta Pesachim, Daf Memvav Amud Beis. Pesachim Memvav Amud Beis, and the Gemara here says like this: Itmar. We're learning this as a Hakadama to the Gemara in Masechta Beya. Itmar ha'oife miyamtef l'chayil. If somebody bakes, who adin if somebody cooks, if somebody cooks on Yom Tif, excuse me, if somebody cooks on Yom Tif for chayil, cooks on Yom Tif for after Yom Tif, and after Yom Tif is a Yom Chayil, what's the din? Rav Chizda Amar like it. So Rav Chizda says the person who bakes on Yom Tif for chayil is over Isur Deiraisa, and he gets malchus. Like it. Rabba Amar ain't a like it. Rabba says it's not an Isur Deiraisa, you don't get malchus. So the Gemara explains. Rav Chizda Amar like it. Rav Chizda says you get malchus, you are over Isur Deiraisa. Lo Yamrinan, we don't say Hayil u'miklei archim chazilei. We don't say the svara of Hayil, which I will explain in a second. And Rabba Amar, Rabba says Eina Loike, you don't get malchus, because Hamrinan Hayil, we do say Hayil. Okay, so what's the word of Hayil? Hayil u'miklei archim chazilei. When a person cooks or bakes on Yom Tif, and the food is ready on Yom Tif, so Taka, you're doing it for Hayil, you're preparing for after, but you're doing it on Yom Tif. So the Svar of Hayil says, since if theoretically guests would show up, if guests would just automatically surprise you and show up in your house, the food that you made, Taka, you made it for Hayil. You made it for after Yom Tif. But theoretically, hypothetically, if guests showed up on Yom Tif, you would be able to serve them this food. So that means that this food is be'emes chazi for Yom Tif. So that's the svar of Hayil. So Rav Chizda says, we don't say Hayil. En kazeh davar. No such thing. If you cook on Yom Tov for Hayil, it's Isur Deiraisa. You get malchus. We don't say hypotheticals. That's Rav Chizda. Rabba says, Ein Eloika, you don't get malchus. There's no Isur Deiraisa in cooking from Yom Tov to Hayil, because we say Hayil. Since theoretically, hypothetically, if guests would come on Yom Tif, you would be able to give them this food. So Mela, it's considered like it's as if you're cooking on Yom Tif for Yom Tif, and therefore it's tzarchei hayoim, and you don't get malchus. So the Gemara continues like this: Amalei Rabba le Rav Chizda. So Rabba says to Rav Chizda, "Ich verstehe nicht. Ledidach, according to you, the Amris lo yamrinan hayil." That you say we don't say the svar of Hayil, and cooking on Yom Tif for after is the Isur Deiraisa. So then ha'eich oifin mi Yom Tif l'Shabbos. How do we ever cook on Yom Tif for Shabbos? Cooking on Yom Tif for Shabbos, according to your Rav Chizda, is also Deiraisa. So how do we do this? Amalei, so Rav Chizda answered back, easy. The answer is Mishum Erev Tavshilin. That's why we have an Erev Tavshilin. We have an Erev Tavshilin, so we could cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. Because without an Erev Tavshilin, it's Taka Osur. So Rabba says back, no, not so fast. Umishum Erev Tavshilin Sharinon Isur Deiraisa. Could it be that because of an Erev Tavshilin, all of a sudden we could be Matir Isur Deiraisa? If you Rav Chizda hold that cooking on Yom Tif or after Yom Tif is really a Isur Deiraisa, because we don't say Hayil. So how would a Erev Tavshilin help? Yes, he made an Erev Tavshilin, but how could an Erev Tavshilin, which is a Taqana Midrabanan, how could that be matir and Isur Deiraisa? That's impossible. So in that, Rav Chisda answers, Amar lei, Midairaisa, Tzarchi Shabbos Nasan B'Yomtiv. So Rav Chisda answers, really, Midairaisa, Tzarchi Shabbos could be prepared on Yom Tov. You're allowed to prepare on Yom Tov for Shabbos. Rashi explains, Tichsiv, Ach asher yochel l'chol nefesh, v'Shabbos v'Yom Tov chad kedusha hi. Shabbos and Yom Tov is one kedusha. The Tavayu Shabbos ikru, v'ki heichi de mutel levashel l'bay b'yayim, mutel levashel l'macher. So Rav Chisda holds that midayraisa cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos is mutter, because tzarchei Shabbos nasin b'Yom Tov. V'Rabbanan hu de gozer be'gzeira shema yoimru oifin miyom tov af l'chayil. However, the Chachamim made a gzeira that you're not allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos, because if you cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos, people might think that you can cook also on Yom Tov for Chayil. V'kevon dat tzruchu Rabbanan Eiruv Tavshilin islei hakeira. But once the Chachamim anyways require an Erev Tavshilin, so you have a heker and it's mutter. Okay, so that's the Gemara in Pesach. So let's summarize. According to Rabbah, cooking on Yom Tov for Chayil is midayraisa mutter because of the svar of Chayil. Chayil vi miklei archim chazilei, so it's mutter. And therefore you're allowed to cook also from Yom Tov to Shabbos, midayraisa. It's the same thing. Cooking from Yom Tov to Chol is mutter. Cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos is midaraisa also mutter. And the only issue would be Isur Derabanan. And according to Rav Chisda, we don't say Hoyel. So therefore, cooking from Yom Tov to Chol is Isur Deraisa. However, cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos is mutter, as we explained before. Shabbos v'Yom Tov Chad is one kedusha. It's the same thing as cooking l'bay b'yoyim is cooking for Shabbos. So attack again, cooking from Yom Tov to Chayil according to Rav Chisda is also midayraisa, but cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos is midayraisa mutter. However, the Chachamim were afraid that if you cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, you might come to cook from Yom Tov to Chayil, which that's the Isur Deiraisa. So the Rabban made a gzeira against cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos. But once you have to make an Erev Tavshilin, so you have a heker, and we're not going to make this confusion. People will understand. Cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos is one thing. You have Erev Tavshilin, it's different. They won't make a mistake and think that you can cook from Yom Tov to Chol. So comes out that Sai according to Rabbah, Sai according to Rav Chisda, cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos, which is the classical case of making an Erev Tavshilin, cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos is midayraisa mutter. Because if midayraisa would be asur, like the Gemara itself said, then an Erev Tavshilin wouldn't help. An Erev Tavshilin wouldn't help to be matir Isur Deiraisa. Norva then midayraisa, it's mutter to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, either because of the reason of Hoyel, according to Rabbah, or according to Rav Chisda, because tzarchei Shabbos nasin b'Yom Tov. But cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos is mutter. However, there is some issue midarabanan. There's some problem midarabanan, and so the Erev Tavshilin is coming to address that Isur Derabanan. Okay, so that was the Gemara in Masechta Pesachim, and now we can come to the Gemara in Be'er, Daf Tesvav. This is the Gemara which it brings in the Sicha, and we're going to learn this Gemara inside and see a gewaltige oimek that the Rebbe is machadish in this Gemara. So right after the Mishnah, which the Mishnah introduced the idea of an Erev Tavshilin, so the Gemara asks, Minani Mili. Yeah, what's the mocker in Torah for the Erev Tavshilin? Minani Mili. So Rashi right away says, Lav dafka mikro yalif. We're not trying to learn Erev Tavshilin from a pasuk. the Eiruv Tavshilin derabanan, because Erev Tavshilin is a takana miderabanan. But what the Gemara is asking with Minani Mili is what's the asmachta? True, it's miderabanan, but usually even the derabanan is an asmachta from a pasuk. What's the asmachta? So Minani Mili, what's the makir? Omar Shmuel, Omar Kra, pasuk says Zachar Esim Shabbos Lekatshei. Says in the pasuk Zachar Esim Shabbos Lekatshei. Zachreyu me'acher sheba lahashkicha. What it means is remember Shabbos from the other one who's coming to make you forget. There's an acher who's coming to make you forget Shabbos. And so the pasuk is telling you, Zachar, remember, Zachreyu me'acher sheba lahashkicha. Remember Shabbos from the other one who's coming to make you forget. Rashi explains, what does it mean, me'acher sheba lahashkicha? Who's coming to make you forget Shabbos? So Rashi explains, K'sheba Yom Tov be'erev Shabbos, when Yom Tov is erev Shabbos, korev Shabbos lishtakeach machmas Yom Tov. So Shabbos could very easily be forgotten because of Yom Tov. Shemarbe b'su'udas hayoim, because the person might be marbe in the su'udas hayoim of Yom Tov, and he will not leave enough food, enough for Shabbos, enough for a bakovadik Shabbos. So therefore, so the Torah is warning you, Zachar Esim Shabbos Lekatshei. Here you have a Yom Tov. Yom Tov is the acher shebala hashkicha. Yom Tov is coming to make you forget Shabbos, because you might be marbe b'sudas Yom Tov and not leave any food for Shabbos. So the pasuk is telling you, remember. How do you remember? When you make an Erev Tavshilin, so this will make you remember. Because you're only making an Erev Tavshilin because of Shabbos. So making the Erev Tavshilin will remind you, I'm making the Erev Tavshilin in order to remember Shabbos, that I shouldn't eat up all the food on Yom Tov, and I should leave food also for Shabbos. Okay, back to the Gemara. So now, frag the Gemara, my timer. What's the reason for the Erev Tavshilin? Rashi explains, my timer, lama tiknu Erev. Yeah, what's the reason why the Chachamim made an Erev? Krava, they love be'erev mishtoi, because the pasuk, as we said, is not really a mocker, just an asmachta. The pasuk is really talking about something else. Ve'erev midirabanan, the whole Erev is midirabanan. So, ma ro l'sakin, what did the Chachamim see to be mesakin the Erev Tavshilin? So now we have a machlokes. Omar Rava. Rava says, "K'dei sheyivroir mana yafa l'Shabbos and mana yafa l'Yom Tov." The reason for the Erev Tavshilin, mara chacham l'sakin, and for the Rava, k'dei sheyivroir mana yafa l'Shabbos and mana yafa l'Yom Tov. So the person will choose a nice portion for Shabbos and a nice portion for Yom Tov. So Rashi explains, "Mitoich shema arev." Because he makes an Erev Zeicher es HaShabbos, you will remember Shabbos, ve'einei mechales ha'koil Yom Tov, and you won't finish everything on Yom Tov. U'boyer mana lezeh, mana lezeh. So without the Erev Tavshilin, the person might eat everything on Yom Tov and leave nothing for Shabbos. So you make an Erev Tavshilin, b'teich shema arev Zeicher es HaShabbos. So the point of the Erev is that you will remember Shabbos, and you will be boyer mana yofa l'Shabbos also. That's what Rava says. Ravashi says a different reason. No, that's not the reason. The reason is people will say, look, if you're not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, unless you make an Erev Tavshilin, but otherwise you're not allowed to cook. So Kal v'chomer, you're not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Chayil. So according to Ravashi, the reason for the Erev is to prevent people making a mistake and saying, look, if we can cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos, then we can also cook from Yom Tov to Chayil. So to prevent that mistake, the Chachamim said, make an Erev Tavshilin. Rashi explains, Lo l'koved Shabbos tiknuhu. Erev Tavshilin was not instituted for the koved of Shabbos, like Rava said, Ela l'koved Yom Tov, rather for the koved of Yom Tov. People will say, look, you're not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. Unless you began before Yom Tov with the Eruv Tavshilin. So now it's only like you're just finishing what you already started on Erev Yom Tov. But to begin brand new on Erev Shabbos, which is Yom Tov, you're not allowed to. So Kal V'chaymer Yom Tov L'chayil, the Yom Tov L'chayil. So Kal V'chaymer from Yom Tov to Chayil Legamri Loy. Legamri, you're not allowed to do that. Okay, so that's the Shita of Rav Ashi. And then the Gemara a few lines later brings the Tana brings another asmachta from a different pasuk. Another asmachta for Erev Tavshilin. That's the pasuk in our Parsha, Parsha's Beshalach. It says, Eis asher toifu eifu, ve'eis asher tevashelu bashelu. So Mikan, Omar Rabbi Elazar, from this pasuk, Rabbi Elazar said, Ein oifin ela al ha'ofui. It says, Eis asher toifu eifu, keifu lashon, ve'eis asher tevashelu bashelu. So from here we learn, Ein oifin, you're not allowed to bake on Erev Shabbos, if it's Yom Tov, ela al ha'ofui, only if you already have something that you baked on Erev Yom Tov for Shabbos. Ve'ein mevashlin, and you cannot cook ela al ha'mevashul unless you already have something which you started cooking on Erev Yom Tov. This is the asmachta min ha-Torah for the Erev Tavshilin. That you have to start on Erev Yom Tov by making an Erev Tavshilin then. And then comes Erev Shabbos, and you're just continuing what you already began. So Eis asher tevashlu bashelu, ve'eis asher toifu eifu, that ein oifin ela al ha'ofui, ve'ein mevashlin ela al ha'mevushel. That's the Gemara which the Rebbe brings in the Sicha, and the Rebbe starts to analyze the two shittas of Rav and Rav Ashi. So, just before we get into the way the Rebbe explains Rav and Rav Ashi, it's important to point out, l'chura, what a mistake, I think, that most people make in understanding Erev Tavshilin. And if we don't erase this mistake from our head, it's going to be very difficult to understand what exactly the Rebbe is being machadish, and sort of like it's not gonna click. So there's a certain muskel rishon that we have to delete in order to properly process and understand the chiddush of the Rebbe. The common, I guess, mistake we can call it is that people assume that what's the point of an Erev Tavshilin? And Erev Tavshilin came to make that we should be able to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos. That azai, you're not allowed. Cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos is asur. So the takana of Erev Tavshilin came to make that we should be allowed to cook. And perhaps the reason why this mistake is in our head is because we associate Erev Tavshilin with the other forms of Erev. Erev Chatzeris or Erev Tchumin. And those Eruvs, it's klar. What's an Erev Chatzeris? An Erev Chatzeris means midrabanan you're not allowed to carry. A Chatzer, even though a Chatzer midiraisa you could carry, but midrabanan you're not allowed to carry in a Chatzer. However, the Chachamim were mesakin an Erev Chatzeris. Erev Chatzeris is here to be matir what would otherwise be asur. Without the Erev Chatzeris, it's asur to carry in a Chatzer. The Erev Chatzeris is a takana to make it mutter. Same thing with the Erev Tchumin. Azah, you're not allowed to go chutz l'tchum. Going out of the Tchum Shabbos is asur. So, on this we have an Erev Tchumin, it's the takana of Erev Tchumin, and the Erev Tchumin, the point of the Erev Tchumin is to make it mutter. So, both the Erev Chatzeris and the Erev Tchumin are coming to remove an Isur. There's an Isur which predates, an Isur which comes before the Erev Chatzeris or the Erev Tchumin, an Isur which is already in place, and in order to get rid of this Isur, to remove the Isur and to make a heter, to make it mutter, so Erev Chatzeris says, do this, and now you could carry, and Erev Tchumin says, do this, and now you could go chutz l'tchum, And that's how those Eiruvs work. And so, by association, we assume that an Eruv Tavshilin is the same thing. That Azoi, without an Eruv Tavshilin, you can't cook. You're not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. There's an Isur. So the Takon of Eruv Tavshilin came to say, if you do the Eruv Tavshilin, it's going to become mutter. By making the Eruv Tavshilin, there's a way that you are allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. As if the Eruv Tavshilin was nistaken to remove an Isur which was there before it. So as we're going to see, this is actually not the case. It's actually not the case. So let's understand a little bit why this is not the case. Why should we not say that the Eruv Tavshilin came to be matir and Isur? That before the Eruv Tavshilin, it was also to cook, and the Eruv Tavshilin came to make it mutter to cook. So the reason why we cannot say this is because we already saw from the Gemara in Pesachim, firstly, that a Isur midayraisa, certainly there isn't. To cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, there's no Isur midayraisa. Either because of the svara of Rabbah of Hoyel, or according to Rav Chisda, because Tzarche Shabbos nasen the Yom Tov. So there's no need to remove an Isur dayraisa. It wouldn't even be possible. So certainly cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos midayraisa is mutter. Okay, so now the einzige shaila is good, fine. There's no Isur dayraisa, but is there an Isur derabanan? Is there an Isur derabanan to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, and an Isur derabanan which came before the takana of Eruv Tavshilin? As if you want to say that Eruv Tavshilin is coming lahatir esa osur, that Eruv Tavshilin came to be matir what otherwise was osur, it means what you're saying is that there was a previous Isur derabanan, because as we already said, Isur deraisa there isn't. But what you would say then is, okay, but midirabanan, cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos is osur, and that was the Isur Kdom. Even before the takana of Eruv Tavshilin, it was osur. And on that, later came the takana of Eruv Tavshilin to make it mutter. So we could say like that. Or we could say, perhaps no. That before the takana of Eruv Tavshilin, all you had was the din dayraisa. The din dayraisa is that you're allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, and that's the din dayraisa. And the Chachamim had nothing to say about it. The first thing the Chachamim said was Takanas Eruv Tavshilin. Takanas Eruv Tavshilin, and if you say like that, then Takanas Eruv Tavshilin isn't coming to be matir what is otherwise osur, because Isur man chashmei. If midayraisa it's mutter to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, and the Chachamim didn't say anything about it before the takana of Eruv Tavshilin, so then before the takana of Eruv Tavshilin, nothing was osur. So Eruv Tavshilin itself is koilel everything that the Chachamim said about cooking on Yom Tov to Shabbos. So Ki'ilu, just to summarize, what we're asking here now is like this. How do we look at Eruv Tavshilin? Because midayraisa, you're allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. So knowing that, do we say that Eruv Tavshilin is a response of the Chachamim to an otherwise Isur derabanan, which means before Eruv Tavshilin, there was already an Isur derabanan in place. You're not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. I'm going to call this an Isur Kdom. There was an Isur in place, just like you're not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Choyel, so too you cannot cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. Midirabanan. Midiraisa you could, because of Choyel. Let's go with Rabbah, because Rabbah is the halacha. We paskin like Rabbah, so let's just stick with Rabbah to make it easier. Since we have the svar of Choyel, Midiraisa you could cook. However, Midirabanan it's osur. Just like you cannot cook from Yom Tov to Choyel, Midirabanan, so too you cannot cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. This is an Isur Kdom. This Isur precedes the takana of Erev Tavshilin. And on this comes Erev Tavshilin to say that we could be matir it if you make Erev Tavshilin. An Erev Tavshilin is like an Erev Chatzeris, an Erev Tchumin. It comes to be matir what is otherwise also. So that was one tzad. The other tzad that we said was that no, since midiraisa it's mutter. And the Chachamim had nothing to say about it until Erev Tavshilin. Erev Tavshilin is the first time the Chachamim addressed the issue of cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos. And if that's the case, they're not addressing a previous Isur, because there was no one to answer it. Midiraisa was mutter, and the Chachamim had not yet said it's Asur. And Erev Tavshilin itself includes everything that the Chachamim said about cooking on Yom Tov to Shabbos. Okay, so on this question, it's clear from the Sikha, both from the way that he explains Rava and Ravashi, it's clear from the Sikha that the Pshat is like the second way. Pshat is like the second way, meaning that there's no Isur D'Rabbanan Kodum. There's no Isur D'Rabbanan which precedes and predates Erev Tavshilin that said you're not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. Before Takanas Erev Tavshilin, cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos was mutter midiraisa and mutter midirabanan, and it was completely mutter. And therefore Erev Tavshilin is not coming to be matir as asur, according to both Rava and Ravashi, as we're going to soon see. Erev Tavshilin is not coming to be matir as asur because before Erev Tavshilin there was no isur. It was mutter. Erev Tavshilin is the first thing and the last thing and all that Chachamim said about the issue of cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos. So this is why I think we have to sort of change our thinking. We're all used to thinking that like this, it was Asur, and Erev Tavshilin came to make it mutter. Like this, you were not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. Along came the Chachamim and made a takana of Erev Tavshilin to save us and find a way for us to cook. We have to stop thinking that way. That's not the pshat anymore. The emes is that before Takanas Erev Tavshilin, the Chachamim hadn't said anything. Cooking midiraisa was mutter. Midirabanan, nothing had changed. And the first thing that the Chachamim said about the issue was Takanas Erev Tavshilin. And if that's the case, Erev Tavshilin is not coming to be matir as asur because there was nothing asur. Erev Tavshilin is the extent which it is everything which the Chachamim said about it. Okay, so let's now understand Taka why. So why is that the case? Why are we saying a dafka like this? So if you look in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and again Tov Kuf Chav Zayin, this time Sif Aleph. So the Alter Rebbe explains it. He explains why we're saying a dafka in this way. And he explains, Aleph, Afa Pisha Asur Lasas Afilu Kol Melachas Eichel Nefesh Letzarchei Matzah Yom Tov, even though it's asur to do Melacha on Yom Tov for after Letzarchei Matzah Yom Tov, which we know that's asur midirabanan. Mikol Makayim Im Chol Yom Tov Liyaz B'Erev Shabbos. However, if Yom Tov fell on Erev Shabbos, Min Adin Hayam Mutal Asaysim B'Yom Tov Letzarchei Shabbos. But when Erev Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, Bin Hadin, it would have been mutter. Sheharei hamevashel b'yom tov l'tzarech hachol ein alekim min haTorah. Because really, anybody who is cooking on Shabbos, anybody who's cooking on Yom Tov for chayil, ein alekim min haTorah. Hoyel v'tavshil roi lebay b'yom, because of the svar of hoyel. Since the tavshil is roi lebay b'yom, and if guests come, they would be able to eat it. So, like the svar of Rabbit, midaraisa it's mutter. However, the Chachamim said it's asur to do this. And the reason why the Chachamim said it's asur is because they don't want you to work hard on Yom Tov if you're able to work hard b'chol atzmai. So this is the reason why, even though midaraisa we say hoyil, but midrabanan you're not allowed to. Avol, explains the Alter Rebbe, Shabbos she'achar Yom Tov, When Shabbos follows Yom Tov, Kavan she actually troich b'Shabbos Atzma, since you're not able to cook on Shabbos, Hoya roila hatili troich b'Yom Tov l'kavod on Shabbos. Kavan shasat chak. So therefore, it was right to be matir, to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos, because the shasat chak, she'i afshel b'inyan acher. Umin ha-Torah ein kan shum isur klal. K'shemavashel boy da yom godel. And min ha-Torah there's no isur at all. She'yesh shows b'yom shim izdamnim loy oichim, shlo yochlu adayin hayom, hayo oichlim tavshil zeh. Shemavashel tzarech ha-Shabbos, because of the svar of Hoyel. If guests would come, they would be able to eat it. Afal pichein, tiknu chachamim, shaloi lavashe v'lasas shar kol melachas oichlim levish b'yom tiv, l'tzarech Shabbos shel ha'achrav, afilu boy da yom godel, ela im kininiach erev tavshil. However, the Chachamim said not to unless you made an Erev Tavshilin. So what comes out from the Alter Rebbe is, if you learn Pshat correctly, the Alter Rebbe is saying like this. Midairaisa you could cook from Yom Tif even to Chayil, because of the Svar of Hoyel. Okay, and certainly you can cook from Yom Tif to Shabbos. Okay. However, Midrabanan, you're not allowed to. There's a Isur Drabanan to do that. The Chachamim said not to. Why? Chachamim asru l'trayach b'Yom Tov l'tzarech ha'chayil, keimen she'efshel l'trayach b'chayil atzma. Since you're able to cook on chayil for chayil, so the Chachamim said, why should you cook on Yom Tov for chayil? Cook on chayil. So that's the reason why the Chachamim made it asur to cook on Yom Tov for chayil. But that doesn't apply to Yom Tov into Shabbos. When Yom Tov is leading into Shabbos, and you're cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos, that doesn't apply, because you're not able to cook on Shabbos. So Shasat Chak, Sheyavshli Torech b'Shabbos Atzma. And so therefore, cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos remains theoretically mutter, even midrabanan. When the Chachamim made the Isur against cooking from Yom Tov to Chayil, that did not include cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos. Because cooking from Yom Tov to Chayil, that's asur, because it's efsheli troyach b'chayil atzmai. But since that does not apply to Yom Tov into Shabbos, because when Yom Tov goes into Shabbos, you're not able to cook on Shabbos, so that remained mutter midrabanan. So this is why we're saying that before Erev Tavshilin, even midrabanan it was mutter. Even when the Chachamim said, we're going to make it asur to cook from Yom Tov to Chayil, that did not include cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos. Cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos remained mutter. So when did it become asur? It became asur within Takanas Erev Tavshilin. Tiknu chachamim shaloi lavashel Elohim keniniach Erev Tavshilin. So it was the Erev Tavshilin itself that brought about the Isur. So this is what we were saying before. It's not pshat that there was an Isur before, an Isur Kdom, and the Erev Tavshilin came to break the Isur, to be matter the Isur. No. Before Takanas Erev Tavshilin, it was mutter. It was mutter midiraisa because of Hoyel. It was mutter even midirabanan because it's efsheli troyach b'Shabbos Atzma. It's a shasat chak. So it was mutter. It was the Takana of Erev Tavshilin itself which created the Isur. So it comes out that Erev Tavshilin is not the remedy to the problem. Erev Tavshilin creates the problem and the solution. It's not the pshat that Erev Tavshilin came to be matir esa asur. No. Erev Tavshilin brought the isur and the solution. It was the same takon of Erev Tavshilin which said, you're not allowed to cook, Elohim can you make an Erev Tavshilin. So it's both Nukudis are included within the Erev Tavshilin. So again, it's not like an Erev Chatzeris l'mashal. An Erev Chatzeris is not including an Isur. An Erev Chatzeris is coming to address a pre-existing Isur. You're not allowed to carry in a Chatzer. That's already in existence. Comes again Erev Chatzeris with a refuah, with a solution. Do this and this and you have a solution. So Erev Tavshilin is nishtazai. Erev Tavshilin is the takana of Erev Tavshilin gufa creates the Isur and the takana. Erev Tavshilin is the solution and the problem. It says you're not allowed to cook, Elohim kain, you make Erev Tavshilin. Okay, so now that we understand that, let's understand what's the machlokes between Rav and Rav Ashi. So the Rebbe explains it like this, that Rav and Rav Ashi are arguing, as we just said, there are two, now within the Takon of Erev Tavshilin, there are two Nekudas. There is the Isur, Erev Tavshilin creates the Isur, and Erev Tavshilin also creates the solution. So they're arguing, what is Erev Tavshilin Be'ikr? What's the Teichen of Erev Tavshilin Be'ikr? Let's do Rav Ashi first, because perhaps Rav Ashi is a little closer to how we would seemingly understand it. So Rav Ashi says like this: Erev Tavshilin Be'ikr came lesser. The takon of Erev Tavshilin Be'ikr is an inyan shlili in the lashon of the Sikha. Erev Tavshilin came to create an isur. Again, before Erev Tavshilin, before takonas Erev Tavshilin, it was mutar midaraisa and mutar midarabanan. When the Chachamim came along with takonas Erev Tavshilin, Be'ikr, the Chachamim were coming to be oiser. In takonas Erev Tavshilin, Be'ikr, the Chachamim were out for an inyan shlili to create a new isur. Takonas Erev Tavshilin said, you're not allowed to cook. Elohim came, you make Erev Tavshilin. So according to Rav Ashi, Erev Tavshilin is doing both, but it's doing it in the following order. First and foremost, Erev Tavshilin is oiser. You're not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. That's the first thing it does. That's the Iker thing it does. It's Be'ikr Inyan Shlili. And then it says, but if you make Erev Tavshilin, then you're allowed to. What's the reason? The reason is, so Rav Ashi explains, the reason why the Chachamim make it Asur is because they're worried that if we allow you to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, you might come to cook from Yom Tov to Chol. And that's Asur. So therefore, they said, okay, we're going to say now, Takanas Erev Tavshilin, it's just like you cannot cook from Yom Tov to Chol, you also cannot cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. But if you make Erev Tavshilin, since that's a hecker, that's going to remind you, you have now something to differentiate between Yom Tov into Shabbos and Yom Tov into Chol. So in that way, you could cook. So that's Rav Ashi's way of thinking. Be'ikr Erev Tavshilin came to create the Isur. From now on, since Takanas Erev Tavshilin, you're not allowed to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. But then it gives you a way out. Elohim, can you make an Erev? However, Rava has a whole different understanding. According to Rava, what's the reason for Erev Tavshilin? As we said, K'dei sheyiver mana yafa l'Shabbos. It's l'kovet Shabbos. The whole thing is for Shabbos. That if not for Erev Tavshilin, the Chachamim were afraid that you're not going to leave any food for Shabbos. So the point of the Erev is to remind you to leave something for Shabbos. So the whole point of the Erev Tavshilin is to be moisif, to be mechazik the inyan of Shabbos. By making an Erev, you'll remember to leave something for Shabbos. So if we think about that, okay, fine. So where does the Isur come in? When did it become Asur to cook from Yom Tov into Shabbos? So the Rebbe explains that according to Rava, you have to say that the Isur is a secondary thing. The Isur of cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos, it's also included within Erev Tavshilin, as we said before. According to Rava and Rav Ashi, Takanas Erev Tavshilin includes the Isur. But according to Rava, the Isur isn't the Iker. Be'ikr Erev Tavshilin is the inyan chiyuvi. Erev Tavshilin came to make you do something that will force you to remember Shabbos. The whole takon of Erev Tavshilin is to address Shabbos. Erev Tavshilin is not speaking to Yom Tov. Erev Tavshilin is not coming for Yom Tov. Erev Tavshilin is kol kuloi inyan chiyuvi l'kovet Shabbos, to force you to remember Shabbos. So where does the Isur come in? So the Rebbe explains, in order to be mechazik this inyan, the Chachamim said that if you don't make an Erev Tavshilin, we're not going to let you cook. So they're not letting you cook. It's true, that's included in the Erev Tavshilin. But it's only there to be mechazik, the primary nakud of Erev Tavshilin. The Iker Teichen of Erev Tavshilin, the purpose of Erev Tavshilin is not to create Isurim. The purpose of Erev Tavshilin be'ikr is inyan chiyuvi, to promote Shabbos, to emphasize Shabbos, to highlight Shabbos, to bring cover to Shabbos. But if the Chachamim just left it at that, okay, what? So people are not going to take it seriously. So in order to make people take it seriously, the Chachamim said, by the way, this is serious business. If you don't make an Erev Tavshilin, we're not going to let you cook for Shabbos. So they only included an Isur. They only included the Isur of not being allowed to cook as a way to make people take it seriously, as a way to be mechazik the takana. But the ikar takana isn't that isn't against cooking. The ikar takana is lekavod Shabbos. So it comes out like this, in summary. Say according to Rav and say according to Rav Ashi, before the takana of Erev Tavshilin, cooking was mutter midiraisa and mutter midirabanan. And it was the takana of Erev Tavshilin, gufa, which brought about the isur in the first place, and the solution. But bezeh gufa, Rav and Rav Ashi have extremely different views on what is the teichen of the Erev Tavshilin. According to Rava, Erev Tavshilin is there pashut lekavod Shabbos. Do something to remember Shabbos, otherwise you're going to forget about Shabbos. So we're going to make you do an action, make an Erev Tavshilin, create a shturim, remember Shabbos, put aside food for Shabbos. That's be'ikr with the takana. And only as a zaitik thing, as a way to strengthen this takana, to make you take it seriously, the Chachamim throw in ki'ilu after the fact, oh, by the way, if you don't make the Erev Tavshilin, you won't be able to cook. So take it seriously. So it includes an Isur, but it's not primarily an Isur. Primarily it's here to promote the inyan chiyuvi kavod Shabbos. And it's just as a chizuk that the Chachamim included an Isur that you wouldn't be able to cook without it. But Shenkin, according to Rav Ashi, Adarabba, be'ikr Erev Tavshilin came le'isur. Be'ikr Erev Tavshilin came to say it's also you're not allowed to cook. Because if you start cooking from Yom Tov to Shabbos, you might come to cook from Yom Tov l'chayil. That Isur is the takana of Erev Tavshilin. That's what the takana of Erev Tavshilin be'ikr came to say, that it's also. Elohim, can you make an Erev? An Erev gives you a heker, so now you could cook. So Nimtza, Silot Rav and Silot Rav Ashi, an Erev Tavshilin is not coming lahatir es ha'asur. An Erev Tavshilin is not coming to be matir, what is otherwise previously asur. On the contrary, an Erev Tavshilin is coming lesser as a mutter. Before an Erev Tavshilin, it was mutter. Erev Tavshilin is the one responsible for making it asur. But Gufa, they're arguing. According to Rava, be'ikir, it's coming to be mechazik Shabbos, to promote Shabbos, to make you remember Shabbos. And the Isur Shaboy is ki'ilu a davar noisef, which comes after the fact, just to be mechazik the takana. And according to Rav Ashi, Adarabba, be'ikir it's the Isur. Be'ikir it came to make it Asur. With Elohim, can you make an Eruv? It gives you a way out. Okay, so I'm not getting into a lot of the pratim that the Sikha goes through. I wanted in this shir to focus be'ikir on the Nakuda. But I do want to add one Nakuda, which I think perhaps this whole Arichis makes it clear why Rashi at least doesn't look like the Ran. One of the things that came up, and we didn't get into this, but the Sikha deals with it, is that when the Gemara brings the asmachta of Zochas Yom Shabbos Lekachay, as we saw, that asmachta comes the first thing, and then Rav and Rav Ashi both state their opinions following the first asmachta. Which means to say that really we should be learning the first asmachta of Zochas Yom Shabbos Lekachay in a way that should fit with Rava and Rav Ashi. But it's clear from Pirush Rashi that Rashi didn't learn that way. Rashi learned the asmachta of Zochas Yom Shabbos Lekachay dafka according to Rava, not according to Rav Ashi. And the Sikha explains why that's the case. But in the Ha'aris, he brings from the Ran, that the Ran found a way to explain the asmachta of Zochas Yom Shabbos Lekachay even according to Rav Ashi. And the Ran said, this is in Orah 31, Re'ei Ran, the Mefarsha Yaliba de Rav Ashi, Zachrei mi Yom Tif sheba leser alecha shaloi tevashaloi. So according to Rav Ashi, how Rav Ashi explained the asmachta of Zachas and Shabbos lekachoi? Zachreyu me'acher sheba lashkichoi. According to Rav Ashi, l'chur the tavshilin is not to do with kavod Shabbos. So Rav Ashi would say, says the Ran, pshat like this: Zachreyu mi Yom Tif sheba leser alecha. Like this, you have Yom Tif, which is coming. The acher sheba lahashkichoi is Yom Tif. And Yom Tov is coming lesser alecha shaloi tevashel. Yom Tov is coming to ask you to cook. So and that comes the Erev Tavshilin zachreyu mi Yom Tov sheba lesser alecha. Remember Shabbos from the one who's coming to make it asur, the Hainu Yom Tov, and make an Erev Tavshilin to allow you to cook. I mean, l'chura, based on what we're saying, that Ran would be impossible the way we're learning. Because according to that Ran, it comes out that there is an Isur Kdom. Like this, there's a Yom Tif Sheba Leser Alecha, Shaloi Tevashel. And Zok the Pasuk, Zachar Asim Shabbos Lekatshei, Zachrei, you make an Erev Tavshilin, so that Shabbos will be remembered, Me'acher Sheba Lahashkichai. As if to say, there was already an Acher Sheba Lahashkichai, there was already a Yom Tif that was coming lesser alecha, and therefore we say Zacharei, you make a Erev Tavshilin to remember Shabbos, to remove the Yom Tif Sheba lesser alecha. That's like the first oifen that we started with, that there's an Isur Kdom, and Erev Tavshilin came to remove that Isur. But according to the Sicha, Sai Loit Rava and Loit Rav Ashi, that's not the pshat. According to Rava and Rav Ashi, there's no Isur Kdom. The Isur is within the Takana. So it doesn't make sense to learn this way. You can't learn, even according to Rav Ashi, Zachreyu mi Yom Tif Sheba Leser Alecha. There's no Yom Tif that's coming Leser Alecha before Erev Tavshilin. Erev Tavshilin is the one that created the Isur. According to Rav Ashi, Be'ikr creates the Isur. And according to Rava, it creates the Isur as a zaitik thing to be mechazik the Ikar Takana. But according to both of them, Takana's Erev Tavshilin itself is what is creating the Isur. So you can't say Zachreyu mi Yom Tif Sheba Leser Alecha. There's no Yom Tif Sheba Leser Alecha before Erev Tavshilin. So therefore, it's clear, it seems to be clear why Rashi didn't learn like the Ran. You can't learn Zachrei mi Yom Tif Sheba Leser Alecha because there's no Yom Tif Sheba Leser Alecha before Erev Tavshilin. Erev Tavshilin Adarabah is responsible for creating the Isur. Okay. Just let's go back to the two questions that we asked and in Alter B'Shulchan Aruch and see how Al Pi Kol Hanal it's understood. So here's the beautiful Chiddush of the Rebbe. Based on the Rebbe brings that lahalacha, the Alter Rebbe paskins that one should be choishesh even to shitas Rava. B'diavad we paskin like Rav Ashi. There's nafkaminas, but al-kapanim b'diavad we paskin like Rav Ashi. But lechatchila one should also take into account shitas Rava. So what does that mean? The way we explained that one should, if we're taking into account shitas Rava lechatchila, that means that we should also include that we also need the idea of Eruv, Tavshilin, as the inyan chiyuvi, which is coming kol kulai or rubei kulai to promote Shabbos. That the Erev Tavshilin came to be mechazik Shabbos. So if that's the case, we can explain the two diyukim. Let's start with the second one. That by Erev Tavshilin, the lashon is mitzvah min hamufchar, lahamtin milechol ha'eruv until the Sudas Shabbos. Whereas by Erev Chatzeris, the lashon was just v'yesh liftzaya olav b'Shabbos shachris. So the Rebbe explains like this: that based on what we said, comes out that since the Erev Tavshilin, according to Rava, was nistakin, Rubai Kukuloi, Lekavod Shabbos, to be mechazek Shabbos, to make Shabbos remembered. So it comes out that the Eruv itself is the Metzias here for Kavod Shabbos. The Eruv is all about promoting and being mechazek Kavod Shabbos. So the idea of therefore utilizing the Eruv during the Sudas Shabbos, including the Eruv in the Sudas Shabbos for as Lechem Mishnah and eating it as part of Sudas Shabbos, that's not only mitzad the inyan of hoyel v'nases by mitzvah achas, yesh lases by mitzvah acheres. It's more. It's within the din of the Eruv itself. Since the Eruv, it's the Eruv Tavshilin Gufa, is here l'kavod Shabbos, the Eruv Tavshilin is here to promote Shabbos, to be mechazek Shabbos. So therefore, using it by the Sudas of Shabbos is being marbe in the very teichen of the inyan of the Eruv itself. The whole teichen of the Eruv, Shitas Rava, is kavod Shabbos, is chizuk Shabbos. So including the Eruv in Sudas Shabbos is necessary or not necessary, but it's a mitzvah min ha-muvchar in the Eruv itself. The more you include the Eruv within the Sudas of Shabbos, the more you're adding in the inyan of kavod Shabbos, which is coming from the Eruv, which is the whole purpose of the Eruv. So b'meile, it's a mitzvah min ha-muvchar within the Eruv itself. The din of Eruv, mitzad dinei ha-Eruv mont, that you should include it in the Sudas of Shabbos. So that's why by Eruv Tavshilin, the lashon is that even though Mikra din you can eat it right away, but mitzvah min ha-muvchar lahamtin milechol ad until the Sudas. Mitzvah min ha-muvchar means it's a hidur within the din of Eruv itself. A hidur within the din of Eruv itself is to eat a dafke by the Sudas of Shabbos, because since the Eruv, according to Rava, is nistaken l'kavod Shabbos, so the more you can be marbe in using the Eruv for inyanim of kavod Shabbos, it's a hidur in the Eruv itself. Hashenkin by Eruv Chatzeres, he doesn't say mitzvah min ha-muvchar lahamtin, he just says v'yesh. Because by Eruv Chatzeres, it's not a hidur in the Eruv itself to wait until the Sudas of Shabbos. There's only the zaytik din that hoyel v'nases by mitzvah achas, yesh lases by mitzvah acheres. So that klal, that since you did one mitzvah with it, you should also do another mitzvah with it. Okay, that's a klal. It's not a din mitzad the gather of the Eruv itself. Mitzad the gather of the Eruv Chatzeres, once it's vadei chashecha, the Eruv is complete. There's nothing to be added within the Eruv Gufa. Elamah, you have another din, a zaytik din, hoyel v'nases by mitzvah achas, yesh lases by mitzvah acheres. Okay, so therefore mitzad that din, you should wait until the Sudas of Shabbos. But it's not a mitzvah min ha-muvchar in the Eruv itself. Mashenkin Eruv Tavshilin, since Eruv Tavshilin we said is very different. But Mehusa Eruv Tavshilin like Rava is a takana which was instituted l'kavod Shabbos, to be mechazek Shabbos. So therefore it's a mitzvah min ha-muvchar in the Eruv Gufa to wait and use a dafke by the Sudas of Shabbos to be marbe in this inyan of kavod Shabbos, which is the point of the Eruv itself. That's how he explains that diuk. And that's also how he explains why the second difference. Why by Eruv Tavshilin the Alter Rebbe brings dafke to wait until the Sudas Shlishis, Hashem by Eruv Chatzeres he doesn't. By Eruv Chatzeres, as we said, since it's not a hidur in the din of the Eruv itself, it's only mitzad the zaytik din of hoyel v'nases by mitzvah achas, yesh lases by mitzvah acheres. So mitzad that din, the Rebbe says it makes more sense to eat it by Sudas Shachris, not by Sudas Shlishis, because by Sudas Shachris, achilas hapas is more of a chiyuv, whereas by Sudas Shlishis, achilas hapas is less of a chiyuv. So since it's more of a mitzvah, since the pas is more of a mitzvah, more of a chiyuv, by Sudas Shachris, so it's better to eat it then. Since you're only doing it to be mekayim the inyan of hoyel v'nases by mitzvah achas, yesh lases by gamkin mitzvah acheres. So the mitzvah acheres beser Sudas Shachris, because Sudas Shachris is a bigger mitzvah, because the achilas hapas is more of a chiyuv. Ashenkin by Eruv Tavshilin, since as we said, it's not just mitzad hoyel v'nases by mitzvah achas, yesh lases by mitzvah acheres. The idea of keeping the Erev and including the Erev, incorporating the Erev into the Shabbos, is mitzad the gather of the Erev Gufa, which was nistak in the Kavod Shabbos according to Rava, and we're chayshish the shitas Rava lechatchila. So since that's the point, so then of course the more sudas you can include, the better. Why eat the Erev in the morning and end the Erev then? If you can drag it out and include the Erev for more sudas of Shabbos, then it's more of a Heisafa, more of a Hidur, more of a Hadgasha, more of a Chizuk in the idea of Kavod Shabbos, which is the Erev itself. Again, so since by Erev Tavshilin, it's not just the Indian of Hoil v'Nazah b'mitzvachas, Yesh lazah b'mitzvah cheres. The idea is mitzvah min ha-muvcha lahamtin. It's a hidur in the Erev itself, that since the Erev itself is nistak in the Kavod Shabbos, therefore it should be included and used by the sudas of Shabbos. So the more sudas you can include, the longer you can wait, the more of Shabbos that you can encompass with the Erev, the more of a mitzvah min ha-muvcha it is. So that's why by Erev Tavshilin, Alter Rebbe says not to eat it b'sudas shachris, but to wait till the last second, dafka suda shlishis, which is the last suda. That's when you should eat the Erev. This way you're dragging out the Erev, which is nistak in the Kavod Shabbos, and including the whole Shabbos in the use of the Erev. Okay, maybe we were ma'irich a little too much, but this is the nakuda of the Sikha.